So starting off, we have to think about the way that we categorize human performance is you're trying to do some sort of physiological adaptation, right? So whether you want to grow muscle, be stronger, or recover faster, you want to just have more energy throughout the day, you want to be happier, it doesn't matter. You're trying to cause some sort of change. That's called adaptation. Well, adaptation is a function of three things. Really, it's stress and recovery, right? Now, I said three, and I just gave you two, but I split up stress into two separate categories. I call them hidden stressors and visible stressors. And really, all that happens here doesn't occur. And what I mean by that is if the stress load is too high and it exceeds the ability to recover, then no adaptations occur, or sometimes you get adaptations, but in the wrong direction, right? So things get worse. If you don't do enough stress, though, there's no impetus for adaptation. So recovery can be as high as you want, but you're not doing anything. So we're playing this stress load recovery game. And if we do that right, we get the right kind of changes. If we don't do it wrong, we either no change or negative change. That's the most global answer. So when I break that down, my initial assessment of an athlete or a high performer, sometimes we work with non-athletes, is I'm going to go through a very detailed analysis of each of those buckets and figure out what's going on with their hidden stressors, what's going on with their visible stressors, what's their recovery capacity look like. And that is going to give us an equation and actually give us quantifiable numbers and explain how much adaptability they have. That's all we have to do. From there, then we have to just monitor and deploy stressors in the right spots that we want them to be in, remove them from the spots we don't want them to be in, so we can push more adaptation, because the total stress load can stay the same, but you're getting more stress from the areas you want and less from the areas you don't want. And or can we up the lever on the recovery capacity? That's the most broad way to think about it. And I could certainly go through kind of each subcategory if you want.
Please.
And give it more detail.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so we'll start off with what I call visible stressors. And I call them this because they tend to be symptomatic. They tend to be obvious. People tend to, they know the difference. This is stuff like emotional stress. This is psychological stress, right? So you're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel like you can't focus. You're going to feel all these things. And a lot of the times, visible stressors are habits and activities that you know are not beneficial, but you're doing them anyways. Right. So, like, I don't need to talk about, hey, you're spending too much time on, we all know Twitter and all these things, right? So if that's giving you a negative emotional reaction, then stop fucking spending so much time on TikTok. Like, what are you doing? Obviously, psychology and emotional and mental health, and like, this is a very large topic. It's not just as simple as, oh, don't go on the internet. But we want to check those boxes off, right? So we have various evidence-based screens that we'll run, and we have specialists in these areas that we'll go to if we need. We're going to really try to run a diagnostic and figure out, do you have a ton of stress in that area, yes or no? Are you a professional athlete? Are you a really just high-strung person? Do you handle stress well? Do you not, etc.? And just where are you landing on that spectrum? And I guess one thing I should have said before I started with all this is nobody's perfect in anything. But what it really comes down to is me saying, okay, what do I need to spend the most time on with you? Because everyone could get better emotional regulation. Everyone could get better psychological, everyone. But it's like, hey, you're pretty good here, but we have these massive holes over here, 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 and here. Because you don't have time to do everything. You can't employ every single positive health practice anyone's ever said on the internet.
Right.
So with people, you have to figure out what are the 2 to 3 to 4 most important things. So if we go through and go, hey, you know what, like, you don't think your biggest problem, your biggest stressor is not emotional health? Okay, great. And we might give them some small recommendations. Hey, maybe try this or this or this, but I'm not going to call these what we call severe performance anchors, right? So an anchor is something that holds you back, right? So what happens is if any one of these categories within visible or hidden stressors or recovery capacitor is severe, this anchor is just dragging you. And all we have to do is lift up that anchor and you go faster just because something's not dragging you back. And this is typically people are just like, I just don't know why. Like, I don't know what's that's a performance anchor. And so the analogy we'll give is if you're in a car and you're going downhill and you want to go faster, I said, great. Most people assume the best way to do that is to put their foot on the accelerator. But if your foot is already partially pushing the brake down, all you're going to do by pushing the accelerator is rev the engine more. You might go a little faster, but you're most likely to blow something up. The easier route is just take your foot off the brake. And then you're going to go a lot faster. And if you still want to go faster after that, now we can push down the accelerator. But if you push down the accelerator while your foot's in the brake, you're just going to blow your engine. So first step is figuring out, is our foot on the brake? And if so, how much? A little bit, a lot, way down? Well, I'm not even fucking with accelerators. If your foot is smashing down and your e-brake's on and we're skidding and tires are blowing, we have got to back off first. And then you'll actually go faster by just pulling your feet off the brake.
It's like times in,
good.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, it's kind of like times in by zero in mathematics. You could have the biggest number in the world, but if you times by zero, you get zero.
Totally. So if your foot's just kind of like lightly tapping the brake, then it might be like, you know what, let's just hit the accelerator. We're okay. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have your foot perfectly off. But if your foot's kind of smashed or your foot is on the brake and the e-brake's up and your arm's out grabbing poles, trying to hold things, there's no point. So there's a lot of things within these categories, but the visible ones, other important visible ones, hydration, sleep. And so like say for sleep, we identify, hey, there's a lot of issues and there's a bunch of different things that go into sleep. You know, we might come out and say, hey, you know what? Sleep's not where we want it to be. So sleep is going to be a function of a handful of things. It's going to be psychology, and we're going to run some diagnostics on that. It's going to be physiology, and we're going to collect blood and urine and saliva and figure out what's your dopamine, what's your serotonin, what's your melatonin, what's your cortisol, where is your DHEA, like where are these things at? Is this a physiological problem that either you can't get to sleep, you can't stay asleep, or you can't sleep long enough? If it's not physiology or psychology, then we're going to go to an environment and we're going to run a scan on your environment. So we're going to look at the temperature in your room. We're going to look at the airflow. We're going to look at what's called the CO2 cloud. So this is the amount of CO2 that you're breathing out and it's sitting over your face and then you're rebreathing that CO2. We're going to measure that. We're going to look at the organic acids and the volatiles coming out of your mattress. We're going to look at the particulates in the air and the allergens. And we're going to quantify all of that. And then if it's not that, so it's not, then is there some other pathology? So we're going to do a full, what's called Psg Sleep Study. So we're going to have EEG measures. We're going to measure oxygen saturation. We're going to measure movements in your chest. We're going to look at, is this happening on your left side, on your right side, on your back? And when we take that kind of a depth analysis of all four of those, we fix sleep. It's over. There's just nothing we can miss at that point. So we're going to be able to figure out, is this, again, a sleep habit issue? Is this a routine issue? Like, what's the problem here? Or is your sleep actually pretty good? And hey, while we could improve that, the biggest area is actually the fact that your physical training is not appropriate. So all this stuff goes into just the visible side.